may not know that actually the holiday season represents the highest time period of the year for where people grapple with depression. And so I want to talk for a few moments. Those of you who are in the Listing Mastery class, you actually have an advantage going into this season. What is it about a daily activity you're doing in Listing Mastery that you feel like is going to be most conducive to really appreciating and fully enjoying the holiday season? Connie?
Our daily gratitudes.
Daily gratitudes. How many of you in here have a family member or a friend that you're likely going to interact with this week that you love, but they drive you insane?
I do.
Is it me? How many of you can absolutely, it's funny to see your faces light up as you think about that person that drives you crazy. How many of you can totally visualize, you can already see that interaction taking place? Is there anyone that could just totally see that? Carrie, Dixie? Tell me a little bit about what that's like, Ariadne.
Oh.
With or without pencils?
What happened? Yeah.
We're having my sister and her kids over to our house because they're the only family that we have here, and I love my sister, but we have very different personalities, so we clash a lot.
So what is that, give me an example, what happens? What happens that's fairly predictable that you're going to butt heads?
She does have a lot of input on my relationship with my husband, and
She does or she doesn't?
she does.
Oh, so she's opinionated. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay.
Which is difficult because it places my husband in an awkward spot because they were actually friends before we met. So it's just very difficult for both of us.
Okay, so going into this Thursday, there's already an anxiety or already oh God, here we go. Now, does your sister love you?
Yes.
If you were to be honest,
Yeah.
does your sister love, and you love her?
Yes.
And the connection is important to you. Here's the thing, guys. We've studied the 6 human needs, yeah? Of the 6 human needs, psychologically in our soul, which one is the most important, the most significant to us? Love and connection. Love and connection. As a culture, however, and early on in our lives, we learn to build a wall around our hearts with respect to love and connection, right? And then we formulate the rest of our lives learning how to protect ourselves, because at some point in your life, typically involves your parents. At some point, you think about when you're an infant, will a mother do absolutely anything for their infant child? And then they become teenagers. And what happens to that absolute, unbounded love when your child turns into a teenager? Are there moments that you want to wring their necks?
Fear because they start driving.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, and it was the same for us. So when we were children, there was a moment where we didn't actually experience total unmitigated love from our parents. And for many of us, it was at that moment that we started to learn how to build walls around our heart, right? So why do we study the 6 psychological human needs as a part of some of our mastery courses? Because it's those needs and understanding how predictable human behavior is, given how we prioritize those 6 needs, can be a great predictor for how interactions are going to turn out. Our job as real estate agents is to influence people towards that which they're wanting to do, purchase or sell a home, right? And so we're exerting influence. How do you influence somebody? You influence somebody first by deeply understanding what their needs and their wants and their desires are. So to do that, real estate is really a game of understanding ourselves, understanding relationships, understanding how to build trust, understanding how to build connection. The challenge with that entire game is this. Let me ask you this. before we get well, we're going to unpack your sister. But before we get to that, I want to uncover something. Can any of you think of somebody, not necessarily an intimate partner, but somebody in your life that you truly love? It could be a friend, it could be a neighbor, it could be a family member. Can you think about somebody in your life that you truly love? Has everybody got somebody in their mind? Let me ask you this. What are some things that you actually do? Now, I'm not talking an intimate relationship. I'm just talking to somebody that you deeply care about, that you deeply love, right? But for the purposes of keeping this class PG, okay, let's not talk about an intimate relationship, but somebody that you deeply care about, you deeply love. What are some things that you would do to show somebody that you love them? What are some things that you would do or you would say?
Spend time with them.
Spend time with them, okay?
Call them, check in. Yeah, check in on a regular basis.
What else?
Shovel
Yeah,
axe.
shovel snow, right? Like acts of service. Most of you guys have done the love languages. What else might we do?
Learn what's important for them and do that.
Learn what is important. Like learn what makes them feel heard. Learn what makes them feel loved. What else? Compliments.
Words of affirmation.
Some of you are really showing off your understanding.
I'm hungry.
Do you hear that? There's too much smelling of food.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I was going to say listen, but that might be part of it.
Sure. Okay. Listen. Now,
Be there for them.
be there for them. How about the simple act of saying, I love you? Now, watch this. Dennis, watch for the silence in the room. Watch this. We all, and most of the people in this room, particularly those who are participating in my mastery class, what are two psychological needs that are high on your priority list for the majority of you that are in my mastery class? Which two are they?
Growth and contribution.
Contribution. Interesting. So, most of you, and actually most agents, most good agents, right? Not all agents are good agents, but most, like the really good ones. You know, the ones that get lots of reviews. You know, the ones that stay up late at night if they're concerned that their client isn't going to get the house that they really, really want, right? Most of those agents do a much better job of demonstrating their love for others than they do actually loving themselves. Spiritually, there's a book, a religious book. They actually call it the Good Book. And in the Good Book, it talks about love thy neighbor as you would love thyself. You want to know why the divorce rate is at 65%. You want to know why people feel a lack of connection. You want to know why people don't necessarily feel loved in their intimate relationships, in some of their familial relationships, and even in some of their friendships. Culturally, we have been conditioned to actually not take the time and appreciate ourselves. How many of you would look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you? How many of you, ask yourself, how many of you would compliment yourself? How many of you would actually spend time with yourself? Spend time in nature, spend time appreciating the things around you. Our most basic human desire is to feel love and connection, but you cannot truly serve, you cannot truly, even though you have a desire to, you cannot truly serve and give to others if you're not full yourself, which is why the scripture says, love thy neighbor as you would yourself. Maybe a practice into going into this holiday season is actually taking a moment to look at what you can be proud of for yourself, what you can be grateful for, what you can love about who you are and what your purpose is. right? With respects to your sister, I want to give you a gift that I promise you can change the interaction that you have with your sister. And it goes like this. Right now, you're going into the relationship or going into the scenario with a level of anticipation about how it's likely going to turn out. Why is that? So I want to teach you guys how to recognize when the pattern is about to repeat. Because mostly as human beings, that's how we operate. We operate with a recurring pattern. We want our lives to go a different way, but we've not yet become aware of the patterns that we do to sabotage our relationships. So in that particular instance, there's something that your sister says or does, and then what's your physical sensation? What happens within you? Anxiety? Stress? What does that feel like? You become frustrated. So kind of a slow burn. Right? Now, why does that happen? For one reason and one reason only. Your sister loves you, yes? Yes. However, what's happening is your sister isn't manifesting her love for you in a way that you expect. She's loving you, but she's loving you her way, not your way. Does that make sense? How many can feel what I'm talking about? By the way, if you're honest and you look at your relationships, how many of us, if you're honest, can start to recognize a pattern of maybe I'm loving my loved ones or significant other in a way that I'm good at or feels normal or natural or comfortable for me, but may not be in the style that best serves them. So what's tripping you up with that relationship is there's an expectation that her love for you, that she would manifest or express her love for you in a way that you like. Is that true? Is that true for you? What if during the holiday season you were to let go of that and actually practice? Now, when might you know that your expectation for how she loves you is not being met? How would you know that? Right. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. God gave us a temperature gauge for when our expectations aren't being met, right? What if instead during this holiday season, now for many of you, you've primed yourselves by daily doing your 3 gratitudes. You're looking for 3 things that you can be grateful for, that you can be proud of about your life, about your loved ones. So for many of you who have been practicing this over the last 6 weeks daily, what I'm about to show you can be right there for you because it's just like exercising, right? That muscle is developed. You're able to transition quickly into what? If you were able to trade your expectation for what might make the difference in those encounters? Appreciation. What's something that what's something that your sister has historically or might have said that would instantly like, ooh. Can you think of something?
She thinks that I'm too hard on my husband, like makes a joke about crying.
So she might make a look or a sneer or make a little side comment, and then you interpret that as she thinks that you're too hard on your husband, right? And so then, of course, that doesn't meet your expectation. Now, how's that worked so far? That happens. You can't change her behavior, can you? So how's that worked so far, right? She says or does or has a look or what have you. You get anxious, frustrated. How's that worked over the years with respects to bringing your relationship, or are you even actually experiencing joy in your interactions?
I say something out of frustration. She says something out of frustration. I get mad and she leaves.
Downward spiral. Right? Pretty predictable. So what I'm asking all of you to try on for this holiday season is if you were able to go, oh, look, I'm getting anxious, and recognize, like turn a switch in yourself and go, okay, what's happening is the way she's looking, the way she's interacting with me, what she's saying is not meeting my standard or expectation of how she should behave or how she should love me. And if in that moment you can turn the switch and rather than being focused on that, because look, focus on that gets you what? More anxiety, more frustration, right? Pretty predictable path about how that interaction will go. What if in that moment you could start looking for, what can I appreciate about my sister? What can I appreciate about our relationship? What can I appreciate about her opinions or her own expectations of what a relationship could look like? If you were to look, what could you appreciate about your sister? If you chose to, if you wanted to. Just give me some things, just random.
She's been trying to spend more time with me lately and strengthen our relationship, I guess.
She cares.
Yes, she does.
But look at how it's a trap, that expectation. Look at how quickly, do you know at your soul that your sister loves you? Right? So Cambria said she cares, and you said, sometimes. Guys, this is how powerful our subconscious is. This is how powerful that we try to protect our hearts. What we want at our soul, at a psychological, human level, down to our cells, is we want love and connection with our intimate partners, with our family, with our loved ones. And we develop habits, we develop patterns of stiff-arming people. And then, by the way, it's a self-revolving cycle because we stiff-arm them, then they say something back, also protecting their hearts. And then we say something back, and then guess what? We get to prove out, see, this is why I protect my heart. What if this season you really look at what else might you appreciate about your sister? Even when she's providing commentary or looks about your relationship with your husband, what might you choose to focus on with respect to your appreciation for her?
I think a lot of times when she makes those comments, it's because she loves my husband because they're friends, so I appreciate that.
So I'm going to put comes from love or appreciation for your husband. Yeah? What can you appreciate about that? Do any of you have siblings or family members that don't particularly like your spouse and are pretty vocal about it? Right? Might you appreciate the fact that out of her appreciation or out of her like for your spouse, is she a little more critical or opinionated? Could you appreciate that? We're the only species on the planet that has the ability to take something that feels good and turn it into something bad, and vice versa. How many of you have been able to find some pleasure in a terrible circumstance? You had that happen? How many of you have been in an absolutely great circumstance and have been able to find what's wrong with it? It's how we're wired, right? If you don't believe it, try golfing. Doing something absolutely wonderful, and if you spend any time on a golf course, you'll see how many people are just absolutely outraged. It's what we do, right? So look, if you're wanting to take your life, you're wanting to take your relationships, you're wanting to have the experience of feeling full, we've got to do something. We've got to condition ourselves different than how we've been conditioned as a culture. You think about marketing and branding, right? What is marketing? $1 trillion industry, beauty industry. What are they continuously reinforcing with respects to women? That there's something wrong, right? You need this shade of lipstick in order to be pretty. You need to look a certain way in order to feel beautiful. And they reinforce and they reinforce and they reinforce and they reinforce. Branding and marketers understand that there's two things that motivate people: pain and pleasure. And so in any kind of effective marketing or branding that you'll see, for example, on television commercials, is most television commercials follow a fairly predictable pattern. Introduce a pain and then introduce their product or service as the solution or that will bring you pleasure. Is that true with respects to marketing beauty products? Yes or no? Right? So look, if you want to take your lives, you want to take your relationships to the next level, if you want to continue experiencing growth and progress in your life, you've got to do things that condition yourself. You got to be proactive about conditioning your subconscious to think and behave and perform differently. You want great practice at this. You want to take your level of joy and gratitude and appreciation for this holiday season to the next level. Let me just ask you, were you successful at doing this most of the time, right? In other words, you got that temperature gauge. It's a beautiful thing called anxiety. It's a beautiful thing. I had a coach one time that said, my access to truly loving my spouse is not when things are going great and I absolutely adore her. My access to truly loving my spouse is when she does something or she says something that makes me insane. But he said, that's my access. Why? Because that's my moment to really look within and go, what's happening whereby I have an expectation versus what can I appreciate? And it's developing the muscle, my coach talked about, it's developing the muscle or the pattern or the habit of recognizing, and even, culturally we've been taught to run from pain, to run from stress, to run from anxiety, to run from fear, to run from discomfort. And it's those sensations, it's those feelings, it's those states, those emotional states that give you the greatest access to growth in whatever's important to you. Because like my coach talked about, it was in that moment of frustration with his spouse that he was able to look at and trade, what are my expectations versus what can I appreciate? Would a habit of doing that within an intimate relationship elevate the connection, elevate the love, elevate the bond? Yes or no? Absolutely. When everything is going great, does that necessarily move the needle or increase the passion, increase the love, increase the connection? Not to the degree that grappling with this will. So for you, what would a holiday weekend look like? What would it feel like for you? What would it feel like your experience of it? What would it feel like for you? And where do you think the relationship might go if all weekend long you were proactive at looking at, oh gosh, there's the anxiety, there's the frustration. She made that look. There's that expectation. And you focused your thoughts on, what can I truly appreciate about my sister? What do you think that might look like in a holiday weekend?
Less stressful, and I would be less likely to say something out of anger.
So you would be less likely to respond in anger. And look, the anxiety, the anger, all of that is truly, when you boil it right back down, anger, stress, anxiety, fear, it really all comes down to fear. A fear of what? Not being good enough, or in your situation, not being connected. So interesting that a fear of not being connected will cause us to do things that ensures that we're not connected. Guys, that's the pattern. That's the pattern of human behavior. It's why we want to elevate our performance in real estate. You got to focus on elevating your performance and how you understand how you show up in relationships. Does that have a direct correlation to your performance in real estate? Say yes in case you don't know. Just say yes. Just go along with it. Just trust me a
Let me put it
little.
a different way real quick. What's more stressful, a real estate transaction or a Thanksgiving dinner? Seriously though, because your clients are going to be so much worse than your relatives, and if you can but they are easier to deal with than your relatives, right?
Because
Like,
there's not all these expectations.
There's not all these expectations. We don't have all the history with them and all of that. But if you can master this with your friends and your family and your loved ones, then your clients are going to be leaps and bounds with them what this does. So that's why
You're way more likely to be triggered by your loved ones because there's already within you an expectation to be loved and connected. So what a great opportunity going into this holiday season to really start grappling with that and mastering that, I promise you, think about the pride that you would have over the pride that you would have with yourself if you've got a history of holiday dinners not going so great, and this one, because you were proactive and took control of being triggered or having anxiety or speaking out of anger, that's your catalyst to that. You want to change your life, change your expectations for appreciation every time you start to feel that discomfort, that anxiety, that stress, that frustration, that anger. Those are all extraordinary catalysts that God has given us. It's designed to have you look and have you grow. It's just culturally we've been programmed to run from those. Does that make sense? That's my gift to you for the holiday season.